Hi, my name is Darren Bartlett and I love discussing African affairs on the African continent. Now, in 2022, the world woke up to news that the UK government had signed a deal with the Rwandan government worth some millions of money, and that this deal was meant to reduce the number of deaths or accidents or immigrations or people who are crossing into Europe via the boats, because we know that very many people have been dying on that road trying to cross to get into Europe for a better life, for a better living, or whatever reason they are leaving Africa for. Maybe to look for jobs, maybe political issues. It could be anything. But we know that they still were taking boats and they were crossing into Europe. So they were considered as illegal immigrants, of course, or aliens. And Europe generally was looking for a solution on how they can reduce people, the number of people who are crossing into Europe, but also not only that, but to also discourage people from crossing the ocean into Europe. And now this deal comes into play whereby the illegal immigrants who were in UK or who would be found in UK at that time, or the ones that had collected, the ones who were probably in asylum centers or asylum seeking centers, I'm not sure how they call them, but those places where the immigrants are kept for some time as they try to find a solution for them. And some of them, about 30,000 of them, have been reported to be in hotels but on the expense of the government. And about 7,000 of them are living in former military bases. So they engage Rwanda and say, hey, Rwanda, we want you to take in some of these immigrants into your country. Rwanda says, hello, that's a good deal. I don't mind, as long as there's some money that has to be paid to the country to be able to help these immigrants to settle in Rwanda. I mean, integrate with the locals, help them seek opportunities, have a couple of things to learn, including language, so that after some time they can fully integrate into the society. So, but that choice was up to them, because you could be taken or deported. I actually want to use the word deported. You could be deported to Rwanda. However, it was about the asylum seeker to choose either to now go to another country if they don't feel comfortable living in Rwanda. And yeah, it went on. I mean, Rwanda received some money and the deal was on. Until on the last day, when the plane was about to take off, full of immigrants, to Kigali, the human rights activists were in court, and they managed to stop the process of deporting those immigrants to Rwanda. Twice, in fact. They were not successful. The government of Borisson at that time, Prime Minister Borisson, was not successful. And here comes Sir Starmer, who scraps everything. That deal says, this deal is not worth it. So they scrapped it. And that means that it left Rwanda in a position whereby, for them, they had probably prepared or maybe built facilities or basically made preparations to receive people who were supposed to come. It means that the government actually, they spent money, and on their side, maybe on the contract side, they had furnished their side of the bargain. So what is happening right now is that Kigali has taken the UK to the Court of Arbitration in Netherlands, seeking payment of about £50 million. That is all taxpayers' money in the UK. Because that contract was not actually terminated in a proper way. So it's just left hanging there. Someone just says, we're not going to do this, and they just abandon the plan right there. And so it's so interesting that, look, the deal was supposed to be about 290 million British pounds, and 50 million pounds was supposed to have actually been paid last year. And this is what the government of Rwanda is taking the UK to court for. And the British government is saying they are willing and they are ready to fight this case in their favor. but the Kigali government says, well, we shall also win this case. You see, for me, the most interesting bit is that you have a government of UK, you have a government of Kigali, but there are also another party. There's another party called the immigrants, who are the people themselves, who don't want to go to Kigali because none of them consented to go to Kigali. They were forcefully being put on the plane by law, by the government's regulations, and say, you're going to take this plane and you're going to go to Kigali. You'll then decide your fate when you reach there, whether you want to go to another country or something, or you want to completely integrate in the community. So there are people who are not actually willing to be part of this. They don't want to go to Kigali. But well, they were either way, they were going to be taken forcefully. But then now that it didn't happen, so what happens next? I feel that the UK government and the Kigali government should, instead of going to settle these things in court, maybe they could have had actually discussion prior to going to court, because usually before someone sues you, they'll give you an intention to sue, and then they'll want you to meet some conditions, or maybe you could sit down and have a discussion on what the way forward would be. Maybe the government of UK was not responding to the calls of the government of Kigali, or maybe, there's a couple of things that are not actually put out there, because the news is just that Kigali has taken, the UK to court. And I think that these two should sit down on a table and say, look, well, whatever we intended to do did not work out. Is there anybody who lost money in the process of this? Maybe yes. If Kigali lost money in the process of this, then how do we compensate? If it's supposed to be compensated, be compensated. And formally terminate this whole conversational contract that had come up in place earlier in 2022, so that as government, other diplomatic relations can continue. Because where Kigali has been as of last year, almost there were already some sanctions that were being put on some particular individuals of Kigali, and also the EU believes that Kigali supports the M23, so its name is soiled all over the place. So I think that instead of worsening the relations between the two countries, they could go on a table and negotiate and see themselves out of this thing. And maybe the immigrants would choose another country rather than Kigali. Maybe. And this is the same thing that Trump is trying to do. He gets people. First of all, he actually pushes other African countries to that if you still want relationships with the US, you're going to have to accept that to receive the immigrants or the aliens that are being deported from USA to these third world countries, or to the third party countries, if you want to call them so. We saw South Sudan part of it, DRC part of it. A prisoner refused to go to Uganda. Others were received in Eswatini. Nigeria never confirmed, but I think they had an agreement, something like that in place. Some other African countries actually refused to receive these aliens or deportees to Africa. And I think these are the countries that largely received sanctions from the US. So it looks like it's going to be a new trend, that you either receive these people and continue working with us, or, we cut ties since you don't want to work with us on something that is bothering us called immigration. And I wonder why. But I also get it if they said that they cannot deport people back to their original countries. The reason most of these people cannot be deported back to those original countries is because they left that place. An asylum seeker is basically someone running away from a situation that is from home. So you cannot take them back to that place. And that's why if an asylum seeker breaks the regulations and goes back to the country of origin behind the back of the country, or maybe without the country that they went to knowing this, they usually cancel your asylum documents and they will force you to go back to the country that you came from. But so let's see where this story goes. But I've picked interest in it, and I really want to get my hands on the actual documents, what the documents are in terms of the filing, the case, the issues that are in this case. I really want to read them. I know it will take a very long time for the court to decide on this, but I really want to understand the details of that case and what the UK has to respond to this case. My name is Darren, and I will see you in the next one.